So there's this idea that every person actually dies twice. Once when you take your last breath, and then a second time when your name is spoken for the last time. And because death is like this great big mystery, people are, so scared of being forgotten. And it's not just people today. Experts believe that ancient Egyptians actually built the pyramids so that they'd be remembered by the world. I mean, snaps to them. It worked. It worked. If you're in America, dying isn't necessarily about being remembered. It could be stressful. It could be expensive. And the industry makes over $20 billion a year. That's because they know eventually everyone dies. And it seems like the only way to do it is to bury someone in an expensive casket. Or maybe cremate them and put them in an expensive piece of like pottery, but called an urn, you know? So it got me thinking, why does dying in this country have to be so complicated? I mean, does it have to be this way? And like, who the hell is profiting off of all of the death? So today, let's talk about the dark history of death. Hi friends, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Bailey Sarian, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, Dark History. Hi. Here, we believe history does not have to be boring. I mean, it might be tragic. Sometimes it's happy. But either way, it's our dark history. So before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe because I come out with that hot, juicy history goss every week. Yeah, and let me know what you think, like down below in the comment section. I love hearing from you. And I read them at the end. Do you stick around? Well, you should. Okay? So today we are celebrating... Are we celebrating? Is that the right word, Joan? Do you celebrate? Well, some celebrate death. But Paul has passed on to a better life. Some could say he died twice because he was already dead and now he's dead again. So we're having a funeral for him. If you're watching on the podcast, Joan is dressed. I have a hat, but it's really itchy. I'm not a hat girl. I want to be a hat girl. For a funeral, I'll wear a hat. Especially Paul. He was such a nice guy. Barely spoke, had no opinions, thoughts, never said no. Dream man. We're gonna miss you, Paul. Do you have anything to say, Joan? Okay, great. That was deep. Thank you. Okay, so death. Let's talk about it. Because every culture throughout history has had to come up with like its own way of dealing with death. And over thousands of years, like we've tried out a lot of different things. If you've listened to our mummy powder episode, you know that Egypt used to preserve their dead through mummification. Slowing down the decay of a body through mummification was thought to help preserve a person's soul, and also it would help it move on to the afterlife. So beautiful. In a way, it was like showing love and respect for their dead. And the funeral itself was more of a symbol of the afterlife. And even though most Egyptians couldn't afford to preserve their mummified relatives in a pyramid, they could throw like a big funeral for them, and they would. Like hundreds of people would show up to honor the dead, and they would come dressed as different Egyptian gods. Everyone, I mean, who doesn't like a theme? I love going to a party with a theme. Imagine going to like a funeral and someone shows up dressed as like the same god as you. And you're like, really? Like, oh my God, is she dressed as Ra? Please tell me she's not dressed as Ra. I said I was coming as Ra. So after Rome took the big plunge and went full Christian, they kind of like created new rules surrounding death. First, they announced that all pagan death rituals were banned. No, you can't do that anymore. Apparently the Greeks and the Romans practiced cremation, which was like really upsetting to the Christians. So they knew once they banned cremation that they'd have a problem pretty much like when it came to burials. I mean, there was only so much space in the graveyard. Where were they going to put everyone? So the early Christians invented catacombs, which were these underground chambers to store dead people. Some pagans hated like this Christian tradition, so they would burn or like tear down these catacombs. So like a lot of the times they were kept secret, so they wouldn't be burned or destroyed. I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too, like having secret death chambers kind of feels way more over the top than cremation, right? But okay, do your thing, Roman Christians. In the mid-1700s, the catacomb tradition made its way to Paris, and the city was running out of space to bury its dead. The only major cemetery where people could be buried was called like Holy Innocence Cemetery. it was at capacity. Whoa. So they started burying people in mass graves instead of like individual graves. But still, it wasn't enough. Paul, what are you listening to over there? I mean, you always have the best recommendations. So tell me, what are you listening to? What's that? You're listening to Courage to Soar by Simone Biles on Audible? Paul is obsessed with Simone Biles. He's a big fan. And in Courage to Soar, the official autobiography from our 4-time Olympic gold winning and record-setting American gymnast Simone Biles, Simone shares how her faith, family, passion, and perseverance has made her one of the top athletes and gymnasts in the world, and also goes into how you overcome challenges in your life. But to be fair, Paul, I think she won more gold medals just recently, so, I mean, great. I'm definitely going to give it a listen, Paul. Thank you for that great recommendation. Now, whether you love diving into gripping stories, you're seeking motivation, or craving expert advice, Audible has something for you. I mean, imagine new worlds, new possibilities, and new ways of thinking, all while you're listening on Audible. Listening to audiobooks and podcasts on Audible can bring positive changes to your mood, your habits, and your overall well-being. I mean, it's more than just entertainment. It's a way to enhance your daily life. With Audible, you'll have access to the best selection of audiobooks, bar none. I mean, plus you can enjoy popular podcasts and exclusive Audible originals all in one easy-to-use app. Now, whether you're into bestsellers, new releases, or hidden gems, Audible has thousands of titles waiting for you, and they're constantly adding more. Now, imagine being inspired and entertained while doing household chores or working out, or even during your daily commute. Audible fits seamlessly into your routine, making it easy to enjoy great content without having to carve out extra time in your day. So what are you waiting for? Unlock a world of inspiration and entertainment with Audible today. There's always more to imagine when you listen with Audible. And guess what? You can sign up for a free 30-day Audible trial and get your first audiobook free. Oh yes. Just visit audible.com/darkhistory to get started. Thanks, Paul. Definitely going to give that a listen. Well, in the spring of 1780, people who lived near the Holy Innocence Cemetery, they started experiencing medical problems out of the blue. I know at first I was like, ghosts. No ghosts. Medical problems. So I guess a lot of them were experiencing breathing problems, and they were vomiting. So authorities, they investigated what was going on, and they came to a horrifying conclusion. Horrifying. The decomposing bodies in the cemetery were releasing decomposition gases, and it was coming through the dirt. Aww. Yep. So these gases would rise through cellars to the ground floor of homes, and people were just like, if I could breathe, I can't really breathe, but if I could breathe, they were breathing it all in. I got one good nostril. I know, imagine you're just minding your own business watching Full House, and you have this cough that's just going on forever, and then you find out it's because you've been inhaling dead people gas. I'd be like, that kind of sucks. Also, how did the authorities not automatically realize it's a cemetery? I know, ghosts. I'd be like, it's the ghosts that are making you guys sick. You're possessed. Case closed. You're welcome. Well, once they figured out what the problem was, I guess the people in charge of the Holy Innocents Cemetery had to get rid of some of the buried bodies. So workers came out and dug up the bones, the situation. I guess they thought that watching bodies being dug up in the middle of the day would be terrifying. So they decided to do this at night with a torchlight. Yeah. To make the whole thing less creepy. Totally makes sense. Once they had the bones dug up, they were moved to the catacombs. And the whole smelly situation became it was, out of sight, out of mind type of situation. Experts believe that around 6 million people are now buried down in the catacombs. And the public is now allowed to go down into the catacombs and see those remains. Yeah. I guess over 550,000 people visit the catacombs every year. Let me know if you've been. I was gonna go I went many years ago, and I was gonna go, but then I was like, wait, I think I'm claustrophobic. So I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do that. So that's my review. Thank you. But let me know if you went. A little earlier in the 1600s, over in the Americas, indigenous people had their own death rites and traditions that often differed from tribe to tribe. The Apache and the Navajo tribes were quick to bury their dead, and this is because they feared that the dead would resent the living and I guess start messing with their lives. The Apache would also burn the house and possessions of the person who died, and then they would pack up and move to a new home. I guess the reason they did all of this was for purification reasons, so the dead person's spirit had no reason to return. Even if they did return, they moved, so the spirit couldn't find them. They're like, oh shit, not here. But different tribes had more positive relationships with their dead, like the Sioux tribes, for example. So they thought of the spirits of the deceased as being able to help the living, so they would reach out to them when needed. In 1600s colonial America, death was everywhere. Hi, death is here. Especially when it came to young people, which sucks. 33% of children died before reaching adulthood. Life expectancy was not great. The average male lived to 29 years old, and the average female lived to about 20. So, people were kind of dropping like flies. And funerals were pretty simple because they had to be. I mean, one was happening almost every single day. So the night before burial, the family's nearest and dearest would gather to make sure the dead person didn't wake up, just in case. So I guess they couldn't bury a person until everyone had gotten a good look at the deceased, and all agreed this person's dead. Bury him. Then there would be a feast with lots of food and drink and to celebrate the deceased. And everyone would get sloshed. Families would go all out and buy expensive rum. And it was said to be part of the grieving ritual for the pilgrims. It makes sense. Numb the pain away, But things couldn't stay that simple forever. Funerals started getting a lot more expensive. Not just the burial process, but during this time it became popular to give out favors at a funeral. I was like, what? Favors? What? I was thinking, oh, must be something cute and small, like a lollipop or a card with the person's face on it. And you're like, oh, that's so nice. No, listen, back then, people were giving out solid gold rings. Huh? I was like, okay, I'd go to that funeral. The colony started going off on these gifts. It was what they did. I don't know. I guess some people were going bankrupt, okay, because of the expensive gifts. And it apparently had gotten so out of hand that the government had to step in and I guess put some limits on these lavish funerals. Yeah. In 1761, Massachusetts passed an act to retrench the extraordinary expense at funerals. I was like, what's that? Well, it basically said that if you gave out expensive scarves, gloves, wine, rum, or rings at a funeral, you would be charged 50 pounds. I guess they did this because they wanted to stop making funerals so expensive. So, the average citizen could actually afford to bury their dead and not have to give them everyone expensive ass shit. I mean, you would think it's funny to say this now, but burying people shouldn't bankrupt anyone. But look at us today. Anyone who's had to deal with burying someone in modern day knows that Massachusetts law didn't put an end to funeral lavishness. Really? Are people giving out gold rings still at funerals? Let me know down below. Invite me to your funeral. I'll come. What the Puritans did was kind of a sneak preview to what we have going on now. Hey, summer is here, haven't you noticed? And there's nothing better than enjoying some of my favorite cold treats to beat the heat. I'm talking ice cream, popsicles, and a big glass. I love lemonade. But did you know that your favorite summer treat could also give you extraordinary hydration? Oh, that's right. With Liquid IV, you can enjoy refreshing summer flavors like popsicle firecracker and rainbow sherbet that hit the spot when you need transformative, hydrating relief all summer long. Now, Liquid IV has become my go-to for staying hydrated, especially on these hot, moist days. It's super easy to use. You just tear open a packet, pour it into 16 ounces of water, and you're ready to go. One of my favorite summer favorites has been to make a glass of rainbow sherbet liquid IV. Listen, it tastes just like rainbow sherbet, but without like the calories, plus it has the added benefits of electrolytes and essential vitamins. It's a win in my book. Plus, I love the convenience of liquid IV. Whether I'm heading out for a long day in the sun or just like needing a quick hydration boost, liquid IV fits right into my routine. It's so easy, you know? You can carry it in your bag. It's great. And the flavors are just delicious. They have like tangy popsicle firecracker to the tropical pina colada. I mean, there's really something for everyone. What I really appreciate about Liquid IV is that it's more than just a drink. It's a science-backed way to hydrate better. Powered by LIV Hydroscience, Liquid IV has an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Each stick has 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink and includes 8 essential vitamins and nutrients. Plus, it's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Tear, pour, live more. 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Indulge in hydration this summer with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code DARKHISTORY at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code DARKHISTORY at liquidiv.com. Stay cool, stay hydrated, and make the most out of your summer with Liquid IV, America's #1 powdered hydration brand. If you're living in America, hi. You've probably been to a funeral. Maybe you haven't, but maybe you have, where a body has been like embalmed. It's so weird, isn't it? It's kind of weird. But embalming, if you don't know, is a process where a body's blood is replaced with chemicals like formaldehyde, and this helps prevent decay. And essentially, it helps a dead person stay looking alive for as long as possible. That way, a funeral doesn't need to happen immediately. You know, like a body can even be transported a few days later, and when you get it, it still arrives like, hey, that's Bob. Like, you recognize who that is. The need for like a creative way to preserve bodies really took off during the American Civil War. Like, many soldiers were fighting and dying far away from home, and they didn't want to be buried in enemy territory. Well, like their loved ones didn't want them, we don't know if they wanted to, they were dead. Well, transporting bodies back to their homes was difficult. It was the 19th century, and like there was no refrigeration, okay? That wasn't available. Days or even weeks long train rides in the summer basically guaranteed that, the body was going to rot in the caboose. Honestly, I never really thought that would leave my mouth in my lifetime, rot in the caboose. But here I am. Life sure is funny, huh? So then a man named Dr. Thomas Holmes, he shows up and he's like, hey guys, I have a solution. He created something that would keep dead troops from decaying, so that they could be shipped home to their loved ones. He invented embalming. So he began offering his embalming technique to Union troops who died in battle. It was better than the options they had, so many people were like, do it, They took him up on it. And embalming started to grow in popularity. So at this time, it's new. So there wasn't any like formal training to become certified in embalming. So anyone could be like, hey, yeah, I'm an expert in this. And then they would do it. Yeah. Well, because of this, a bunch of surgeons saw the opportunity to make some wartime cash. I guess if you're already trained to do stuff with a body, they're like, well, what's a few extra chemicals? I can do it. So some of these surgeons even started going onto the battlefield, and they'd be like snatching up unknown soldiers and embalming them to advertise their business. Wild, right? What? Huh? Yes. So these dead embalmed soldiers were displayed standing at attention in like offices to show off like how great this new embalming thing was. Look at how great he looks. He's just standing there, doing anything. And he still looks like a person. Here's my card. So, things started to get a little out of hand and also super illegal. So the government was like, hey, no. So the War Department had to issue an order requiring embalmers to get a special type of license. Which, thank God. I mean, could you imagine if people still had dead people just propped up everywhere to advertise? Yeah. Prices were also regulated so that these random surgeons could stop upcharging the family and the friends of these dead soldiers. So that's nice, right? So at this point, embalming had become a thriving industry. If you could afford it, it made sense to embalm someone if it meant the difference between recognizing your loved one's body or never seeing them again. But it was still seen as a wartime thing. That is, oh yes, until a man named John Wilkes Booth snuck up on President Lincoln in 1865 and shot him dead. So when Lincoln was assassinated, his body was embalmed. Because Lincoln was so popular with the American people, it was decided that his body would go on an extended funeral procession so people could pay their respects and say goodbye. It was like a goodbye tour, but it was extended, very extended. It lasted 2 weeks from Washington, D.C. to Lincoln's hometown of Springfield, Illinois. He was transported on a train, but stopped at multiple towns to showcase his body to the waiting crowds. He was on a cross-country tour. Well, his body was. That's pretty wild. I wonder if they made shirts. I saw Lincoln's body, and then had the cities listed, and you're like, yeah, I went to that one. Has Lincoln on the back. Yeah. So legend has it Lincoln was actually embalmed, then re-embalmed again after each stop to try and keep him looking fresh. Weird. Okay, but sure. I'm not judging, but all right. Some say, no, that didn't happen. Stop saying that. They just cleaned him up after each stop. Shut up. But either way, by the time Lincoln arrived at his final resting place, he was so preserved, he was more of a mummy than a body. But that didn't matter, For a lot of people, it was actually the first time they saw an embalmed body. I think that's probably why a lot of people went to his funeral. They were like, I want to see this shit. This is wild. And I guess when people saw Lincoln's body, they were impressed. It was great PR, actually. So embalming became the new way to deal with America's dead. Wow, Lincoln. He really changed it, huh? So by 1882, professional undertakers had created the National Funeral Directors Association. The death industry was modernizing, and there needed to be one central place to train people, because at this point, everyone wanted to embalm their dead. Now, as a result, bodies were no longer prepared or cared for by their loved ones at home. Instead, businesses began to pop up and take care of those preparations for the family. While bodies used to be laid out pretty quickly after death, now there was enough time to put together larger celebrations for the deceased, take your time a little bit more. So funerals or wakes became so big that the celebrations wouldn't fit in a person's living room anymore. So funeral homes with larger celebration spaces became a thing. Started to pop up. Now, because of this, the funeral industry was blowing up. And it seemed like it couldn't be stopped until something happened that changed America forever. In 1918, a pandemic hit. Oh yes, the Spanish flu. It hit many parts of the world. And it was deadly. It was killing thousands quickly. So suddenly, the government outlawed large gatherings of people with the goal to stop the spread. Because of the high death rates, there was no time for embalming. Instead, bodies were expected to be buried as quickly as possible to avoid spreading the illness. Now, at the same time, caskets were already in high demand because of the huge death toll of World War I. So the whole country had a coffin shortage. It was so bad, the War Industries Board had to stop the production of fancy coffins. Yeah, the fancy ones. The ones that had that silk lining inside, nice wood. Stuff like that. They now just needed to be simple wooden coffins for the bodies, and they needed to make them quick. So everyone thought after the Spanish flu, the funeral industry was going to flop, right? How are they ever gonna recover? But shockingly, it actually did the opposite. During the flu pandemic, people were not able to gather and mourn the way they wanted to. And as soon as it was over, people were desperate to get back to public grieving. They wanted things to feel normal again, So when the option for the modern funeral with all the trimmings came back, people were, more than happy to pay for it. So embalming was still all the rage. It wasn't the only solution for disposing the dead. Cremation was having a comeback. So America and its Christian origins hadn't really gotten to experience the benefits of cremation. Many believed it was wrong and the only way to go was burial. But then all these reports about the dangers of embalming started to pop up. Oh yeah. Dr. Francis Julius Lemoyne of Pennsylvania, he was ready to call funeral homes out. Dr. Lemoyne thought that embalming was bad for people's health. He was yep, and I got proof. Somewhere. He believed people were inhaling embalming fluids, and because of this, it was making them sick. And then he was but also, not only is embalming making us sick, but the coffins are making us sick too. He believed the standard wooden coffins that funeral homes sold weren't enough to contain the remains of the dead. In other words, gases and other things were seeping out of the coffins into the ground and into the water everyone was drinking. He's you should be scared. He actually described burial as, quote, barbarous and disgusting. And to fix all the problems he had with funerals, he was I'm going to build my own crematory. So he first wanted to build it on a cemetery property, but was turned down. People were horrified by the whole burning of the body thing. So Dr. Lemoyne went ahead and built it on his own property. He's whatever, I'll just do it myself. So in 1876, he designed an oven to burn the bodies in a way that he believed was respectful. He was look what I can do. He was able to cremate a body without the flame ever touching it, because that's too far. Now, because cremation was still seen as barbaric for a lot of people, he basically only used this oven to cremate dead animals, like sheep. Yeah. So nobody really saw the cremation thing as something legit, and definitely it was not for humans. But all that changed when someone came knocking on his door, begging him to use his service. Sure, being an adult has its perks. You can eat ice cream for dinner anytime you want. You can have a glass of wine, technically, anytime you want. And you get to enjoy the freedom of making your own choices, like taking my pants off 5 seconds after walking through the door. But it's not all fun and games. There's taxes to be paid, figuring out what's for dinner every night, and of course, making doctor's appointments. And that's where ZocDoc comes in, the healthcare app that makes being an adult that much easier. Now, ZocDoc, if you don't know, is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors. You can choose the right one for your needs and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty. From mental health to dental health, eye care, skin care, the list goes on. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. Plus, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and then click to instantly book a visit. And the best part, ZocDoc appointments happen fast. Typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. If you are new here, hi, I have been using ZocDoc for years. Truly, before they even were a sponsor, I love them. I don't know what I would do without it. I have found and booked my dentist, eye doctor, ENT, therapist, and a primary care doctor all with ZocDoc. Swear. Sometimes I just browse on there and see what other doctors are out there and accept my insurance just for fun. I don't know. I need better hobbies. There's so many. ZocDoc has made finding and booking doctor's appointments so much easier for me, and I know it will for you too. You don't have to talk to anyone on the phone. It's great. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/darkhistory to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/darkhistory. ZocDoc.com/darkhistory. Take control of your health and make those appointments with ease. Thanks to ZocDoc. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? It's Colonel Alcott. No? Okay. Well, the man that was knocking on Dr. Lemoyne's door, his name was Colonel Alcott. His good friend, Baron de Palm, died and I guess was recently embalmed. And when he died, the Baron had, I guess, no money to his name. So the Baron's friend begged Dr. Lemoyne to cremate the Baron. I guess the oven was only for the doctor's personal use. Oh my God, he was probably a murderer. Duh. Hello, probably. Anywho, if someone has their own personal cremation oven, I'd be murderer. That's not what I'm getting at. So the doctor had, it was for personal use. So it took some convincing, this guy. But eventually the doctor gave in. He's fine, I'll burn his body. So the doctor was if people can see this cremation being successful, right, they might be open to trying it. So the Baron's body was sent on a train from New York to Pennsylvania and went straight to the crematory. And then on December 6, 1876, I don't know, I guess they promoted this or something because crowds formed to watch the cremation. They're probably handing out balloons. Here you go. T-shirts again. I saw Lincoln and now a cremation with all the But it was clear this wasn't just going to be a quiet experiment. It was a show. People were waiting to see how Dr. Lemoyne was going to pull it off. Even newspapers showed up to report on it, and they did. Just after 11:15 a.m., the remains of Baron de Palm were cremated. The cremation was a success, and because of this, people started to warm up. Oh, that's funny. Warm up to the idea? You get it? Burn, warm. Okay. Also, in the 1800s, cremations were very affordable. Yeah, they are. They were only $25. That's it? Yeah. Burials at this time, they could cost 5 times that amount. So $100. That's a lot. So it was easy for people to be dude, cremate me, right? $25, I'm out. By the 1920s, cremation just wasn't a cost-efficient thing anymore. It was becoming embraced by the rich, and they saw cremation as something modern and also hygienic. And, everyone was all for it until more conflicting studies came out about embalming and burials. Well, these new studies showed that Dr. Lemoyne was totally wrong about the dead body juice infecting the water supply, So people are reading this and they're just I don't know what to do anymore. They're just confused as what's the best option here? And a lot of the public went back to burying their dead again, I don't know. But for some, burying wasn't even an option anymore. The funeral industry was hiking up the prices all across the board, and things were about to get very, very suspicious. So, by the 1980s, even if people wanted to bury their loved ones, they probably couldn't. It was really expensive. And by the end of the decade, the cost of a funeral with a burial was in the thousands. Plus, it was seen as something that wasn't good for the planet. So when you cremate someone, they go in an urn and they sit on your mantle. And you're look, there's Granddad. Let's wave, let's take a picture with him. And when you bury someone, they're taking up a whole plot of land. It's a lot. But now it's not about what's moral and what's not. It's just literally about like what people can afford. In 2023, the average cost for a cremation and urn was $6,280. I know. Can we go back to the $25? What happened to that? Like, what if you bring your own pot? Do you get a discount? You're like, I'll go to pottery class really quick. It's really cheap. Make my own little and just put me in that. How much does that knock off? I should have done the math. But it's a lot. And the average for going the embalming and like burial route is around $8,300. That's a lot. I know. So how did they go from $20 to $100 to now in the thousands? How did it become so unbelievably expensive? Like, why? Well, the reality is people are often faced with having to go into debt in order to afford even the minimum costs of the death of like a loved one. Even more depressing, if someone can't afford it, the body will just kind of get left, and then once it's left, like they'll be unclaimed, and then I don't know what happens after that. They're just unclaimed. I think they get cremated. It's sad. Apparently like 3% of bodies go unclaimed. And when this happens, they will eventually be buried or cremated by a coroner. And their remains often end up in an indigent cemetery, which is a cemetery that like is specifically for people who can't afford, another cemetery. You think with all the taxes we pay, first of all, that pothole outside my house would be covered up by now. It's been years. But also that the government would find a way to help people who are in need of like financial assistance. Right? Well, the pothole's still there, and if you are like the spouse of the deceased, you can apply for something called Social Security's lump sum death payment. Gotta Google that, first of all, But this is like where the government will offer money for those who can't afford to cover the costs. And you're like, okay, great, like this will help. Great, I'm in. So if you're approved, the government will kindly offer you a grand total $255. So, you don't want to be ungrateful, but at the same time, like the average cost of a funeral is like $8,000. So that's like going to cover gas, So I think we can all agree here that $255 will it won't do anything. It'll barely make a dent. So with numbers like that, it makes sense that the United States funeral market brings in around $20 billion per year. That's a lot. And surprise, surprise, sometimes the way they do that are not always ethical. Who would have thought? I know. I was like, what? That's crazy. As anyone who has planned a funeral can tell you, many people have been pressured into buying more expensive products. And this happens when people, are at their most vulnerable. So there are times when like people agree to getting like their Grandma Linda a gold ultra luxe coffin because you're like, Grandma Linda deserves that, okay? But then they're not even realizing how expensive it's gonna be. So in the past, funeral homes have said that every body has to be embalmed for health and safety reasons, which actually isn't technically true. Like embalming a body helps to preserve it, like Honest Abe on his train death tour. But there's no state law that requires routine embalming for every death. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, unnecessary embalming adds an average of $695 to the funeral bill. So back in the 1980s, the government created the funeral rule. Now this was supposed to create some regulations on the funeral industry so they wouldn't be ripping people off left and right. Now they did this by requiring funeral homes to give their customers like an itemized list with the prices for each service they offered. They were also no longer allowed to lie about things like embalming. So if you want to skip the embalming and like just get the burial, funeral homes have to not only let you, but also give you an accurate price breakdown for that. You get it. If funeral homes fail to do this, then they have to pay a fine. So, cut to 2023. The government conducted a massive investigation into funeral home practices. What'd they find? Well, I guess they went like all undercover with it, and they called up over 250 different funeral homes, and they were pretending to be like a grieving family in need of services. Turns out, after all these calls, 38 funeral homes were not transparent about the proper embalming process. And that might not seem like a big number, but each of those funeral homes represents tens of thousands of burials each year. Also, during this investigation, the spotlight was turned on one company known as Service Corporation International, aka SCI. Dun, 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 dun. Just kidding. And turns out SCI over here, they turned death into big business. Hi. The other day I was in charge of family dinner. Oh yes. Now Paul was asking for sloppy joes, and Joan was asking for potato pancakes with smoked salmon, caviar, and dill cream. She was fancy. She's a little fancy bird. And I was wanting sweet soy honey chicken. You can say this was a bit of a dilemma. I mean, family dinners can become a bit of a juggling act between planning, shopping, prepping, and then actually getting everyone to enjoy what you made. It can be stressful. They're never happy. These two, never happy. But don't worry. HelloFresh has got your back with farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. HelloFresh makes home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh has been a game changer. I love their new Build-A-Plate meals. Oh, listen, they let every member of your household create their perfect plate. You hear that, Joan and Paul? No more making multiple dinners to satisfy everyone. Just one meal with so many ways to enjoy. It's perfect for my picky eaters. And it saves so much time and stress. With a changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week, HelloFresh makes it easy to always find something the whole family will love. Me and my fam, right here. One of our favorites is, well, I don't know about Joan, she's bougie, but one of our favorites is the sweet and smoky barbecue chicken with roasted veggies. It's so good. The recipe was easy to follow, and the pre-portioned ingredients meant no waste and no last-minute grocery store runs. So skip the meal planning and grocery store runs with nutritious and delicious meals from HelloFresh. Here's something special just for our listeners. For a limited time, kids eat free. What? I know. Who wants to lie about their age? You? We could say you're like 5. That's fine. Go to HelloFresh.com/darkhistorykids to unlock this exclusive offer. That's one free kids meal per box for 2 months while your subscription is active. Just go to HelloFresh.com/darkhistorykids. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on this. HelloFresh really makes cooking enjoyable, and it's so nice to see my family excited for dinner. Aren't you guys excited? Okay. It's America's #1 meal kit for a reason. Try HelloFresh today and make family dinners stress-free and delicious. So this company, SCI, currently has a monopoly on the death industry, meaning that they own most of the funeral homes and businesses across the country. Oh, yes. So because it's a monopoly, SCI can control the prices across the board. It's like McDonald's, but with funeral. You know what I'm saying? Kinda. If you squint, it's kind of similar, but not really. Anyways, they have a sneaky way of doing this. So they go into small towns and they buy out smaller funeral homes. So what they do is they'll keep the same charming small town name for the business. So the community and everybody trusts them. But the company will go in and jack up the prices. So when families go to this small town funeral home, they assume that they're not being ripped off. You know, they trust this family-owned funeral home that's been in town forever. I mean, why wouldn't they? You know? So some people believe They're being scammed because of this. And it goes way beyond overcharging people for services they don't need. Let me introduce you to Doug Cassidy. Come on up, Doug. He's actually here now. Just kidding. So Doug was the head of a company called National Prearranged Services, or NPS. And this business offered a prearranged funeral contract to customers. What does that mean? Well, this contract would allow customers to pay for their funeral ahead of time. So you'd be like, okay, when I die, like you make all the plans yourself, right? And then you get a contract and then you pay and then you're like, we're set, so my kids don't have to worry about it. And like NPS would put their payment into a trust, and regardless of like inflation, they would get the funeral that they paid for with no extra fees. And you know, for the customer, it was like, oh, this is so nice. I don't have to worry about my family having to like pay for everything, you know, like get this fat bill and everything would be taken care of. But you know, of course, it was too good to be true. Instead, NPS, they were taking like customers' money and just putting it right into their pockets. They're like, Daddy needs a boat. So I guess they were running like a Bernie Madoff type Ponzi scheme. Yeah, I could see that. When the money was paid to the company, it was then used to pay the top officers of NPS, you know, for their yachts. Then when a customer did die, their funeral would be paid for by the money of a new customer, and so on and so on. So as long as like new customers kept coming in, NPS was able to skim money off the top. But like any Ponzi scheme, the whole thing, you know, came crashing down. Sadly, this left many victims of the scam without their money and without the funerals that they were promised. And it was just not great. This scam ran for like over 16 years. And during this time, NPS and this guy, Doug Cassidy, had collected like $450 million. Eventually, the scam was uncovered. And then Doug and like several other NPS officers, they were sentenced to prison time. It's like, lock them up forever. But they didn't. They served like less than 10 years and then they were released. But Doug specifically, he did die in 2020 of natural causes. So I wonder if he got buried or cremated. Did he have a package plan? But I do hope when he was alive, he was haunted by ghosts from the people that he screwed over, right? So when you think about death today, you know, there's a lot of technology happening around us. Hi, welcome to the future. So many people are like looking to ditch traditional ways of doing things. And people are like coming up with some very unique alternatives to, you know, the old school way of doing things. So cremation, still popular, still hot, but like many new businesses are popping up with options for like what to do after a cremation. There's this one option you could do where you can turn your loved one's ashes into like a diamond and then be made into memorial jewelry. I like this idea and I was like, oh, I want to do this with my dog. Didn't do it, but I like that idea, right? That sounds nice. The actual percentage of ashes to diamond is very low, but like the ashes are still technically in there. So, there's also an option to have ashes pressed into a vinyl record. Oh yeah. So, your family, your loved ones can play you and your favorite song forever. If you did that, let me know down below. I would love to know which song they picked. I would want mine to be like Dirty Pop. Sick and tired of yeah, because every time you hear that song, like you want to dance. And that's how I want to be remembered, by Dirty Pop. You heard it here first. Look, there's other options. I've heard of many people like mixing their loved one's ashes with tattoo ink. Yes, so you can get a tattoo in honor of them. Pretty. And finally, This is my favorite one that I learned about. You can actually have your ashes incorporated into fireworks. What? Yes. Oh, yes. I was like, this is it right here. Because you can like truly send Uncle Bob off with a bang. And he probably wants that. You know that uncle who likes to party? That's for him. Right? Sounds like the most fun. Could you imagine though, you're all like gathering with your friends and you're there to watch the fireworks, and then like for a second you're like, oh, can you have me another beer? And then it like blows up and then you miss it. And you're like, oh shit. Okay. Because it's just one time. Did anyone record that? Okay. Whatever. That might be a good option too. I like that idea. Many people are also thinking about the environment after they die. Like, they want their body to be broken down in a way that isn't harmful to like Earth's atmosphere. So one of these ways is aquamation, which uses water instead of fire to break down a body. Oh yeah. And there's this brand new thing that has yet to be tried on humans, but let's just wait. I'm sure next week it'll happen. It's called promession. So it takes the body and it turns it into fertilizer. Yep. And then that fertilizer can be given to the family for like a home or a memorial garden. That's nice. Isn't that nice? So the simplest and like most popular forms of burials these days come in the form of a green death. Green death. In a green death, the body is not embalmed. There is no coffin or concrete vault. Instead, the body is wrapped in like an all-natural cotton burial cloth and then lowered into a grave or like in the ground. If you think about it, we've been spending so many years building more and more elaborate death rituals, and it seems like we kind of like circled back to the simplest form. Should I just put the body in the ground and let nature take its course? It might turn into a tree or something, and wouldn't that be nice? But also don't get too excited, because I'm sure in a few years they'll find a way to charge you like 10 grand to do that too, huh? Yeah. So every civilization has had their own way of remembering the dead, and they almost always sound crazy to like every other civilization. American school kids are, is disgusted the right word? They're maybe fascinated by the ancient Egyptian practice of taking a person's brains out through their nose before being mummified. And to ancient Egyptians, that was their shit. And like they're like, putting your loved one's ashes into fireworks seems a bit odd, but okay. The point is, unfortunately, death is here and will happen to all of us. And a lot of people like want to be remembered after their time is up. But it seems like your lasting presence will probably be the funeral bill. That's depressing. I mean, all we can really do is just do your research, which I hate saying, but like, yeah, do your research and just hope for the best, I guess. How much does it cost to be put in a firework? I'm very interested. Hey, let me know down below, have you ever tried memorializing your loved one with like a diamond or a record? Did you bury them in your backyard? Let me know. I'm curious to hear what you have to say, what other options are out there, what you did. Is the ring cute? What's it look like? I want to know. So we just learned what many of the options are when it comes to death, but what about birth? Huh? I mean, there is no death without birth. And certain people think it's their life's mission to create the perfect human. I recently learned this phrase called designer babies. Oh God, I know. I was like, oh great, what is this? So when I heard that, I immediately imagined a little toddler running around in Louboutins like, pack your bags, we're going to Milan. But let me tell you, even though the phrase designer baby sounds kind of cute and chic, it's a twisted subject with a very dark history. Here we are again, huh? For years, people have been obsessed with the idea of creating the perfect human. From eye color to IQ, a whole secret industry has popped up and many say is trying to play God. And it all started back in the early 1900s with something called the Better baby contest and is happening today with cutting-edge genetic technology. Downside, the whole concept of this has roots in something called eugenics. You know eugenics, we've mentioned it a lot here. It's an idea that like only certain people should breed, and undesirable people should be eliminated. Helen Keller was a eugenicist. Did you know this? But she was blind and deaf. So technically she believed that she should be eliminated, but not her. But she was like, technically, but she would fall under undesirable. That one always kind of tripped me up. Just throwing that out there. What was that about, Helen Keller? Anywho, so join me next week as we dive into the dark history of designer babies. Well, friends, thank you for hanging out with me today. Don't be sad that we talked about death. It's not that scary. Smile. You can join me over on my YouTube, where you can actually watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs. And while you're there, you can also catch my murder mystery and makeup. Hi, on Mondays? Yes, you can. So don't forget to subscribe, because I'm here for you weekly with new content. I'd love to hear your guys' reactions to today's story, so make sure to leave me a comment and tell me what's up with death or something. I don't know, because maybe in a future episode, you might be featured. Now let's read a couple of comments that you guys have left me. The Real Booty. All right. The Real Booty left a comment on our Kennedy's episode saying, fun fact, met Joe at about age 8 in the 1980s at a Sizzler. The Real Booty. The Real Booty? Listen. Do you have a picture? Let me know, because I can't imagine him at a Sizzler. You know, I love Sizzler. They have really good clam chowder, and I know it's probably gross, but I love their clam chowder. It's so good. So maybe he went for the clam chowder. Got pics? Let me know down below. Dusty Ramos 13 left me a comment saying, Bailey is my new therapist. Dusty, I'm honored. Thank you. I am cheaper than therapy. I will say that. But if you can, I would say get a real therapist. You know, you don't want to listen to me. I'm a little off sometimes, But I appreciate that. I hope you're okay. Cyrus Moonside left us an episode suggestion. I love seeing Paul coming to life in the... Ooh, wrong episode to mention the life, huh? I love seeing Paul coming to life in the latest episodes. I hope someday Bailey will do a dark history episode on Abercrombie and Fitch. Paul's dead. Sorry. But I like it too. But he died. Oh my God, this is wrong time. Okay? If Paul were here, I would let him know what you said. I'm sure he would like it. But thank you for the suggestion. I was a teenager once, and Abercrombie and Fitch was like the shit, and only the cool people would shop there. And then like you would walk in the store and it would give you a headache because it was like so intense in there, and everyone was so mean. Nothing fit. I hated it, but it's like, I wanted to like wear it because it was cool. And that's my story with Abercrombie & Fitch. Recently I discovered, they've been doing let me go on a whole rant right now. They've been doing a rebrand and stuff. And recently I discovered their jeans, and I'm so sorry. I love their jeans. They fit me, like the curvy ones. They are so good. I'm sorry. I know it's not what you want to hear. You want to hear an expose. I know. We can do it because they have a shady past. But I like their jeans. So, well, stay tuned. Well, I love you guys for watching, and I appreciate you for engaging. Leave a comment because maybe you'll be featured. And hey, if you don't know, Dark History is an Audio Boom original. And I'm your host, Bailey Sarian. I hope you have a good rest of your day. You make good choices, and I'll be talking to you next week. Goodbye.